Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Footy Classified. Huge show tonight. Plenty to get through. Ross Lyon to join us in the hot seat and a whole big crew in the house tonight. We welcome back football's First Lady, Caroline Wilson. Good evening to you, Carol.
Hello, team.
Welcome back. Matthew Lloyd, the five-time All-Australian in. And Kane Corns in tonight, makes his debut for Gary Lyon. We welcome you, Kane.
Thanks for having me.
And we start with you in the middle of a dispute off the top of your first Footy Classified. That's just the way to welcome you to the program, Kane, with the fallout to Damien Hardwick and your spat on the weekend, your premiership teammates. This was the tweet you said. You wrote, if a top four side concedes 32 inside 50s in 45 minutes, it means you've got ahead of yourself. No other explanation. Damien Hardwick had this to say strongly about that after the game.
On social media, the comment from Kane Corns saying that there's no question that the Richmond guys had got ahead of themselves.
No, seriously, I'd love to see Kane. I'd really love to see Kane.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. That's his job.
Sure.
He's there to write shit comments.
Okay. But do you give that any credibility, though?
Please.
I believe you reached out and spoke to him today. Can you tell us whether you've cleared the air or are you still at war tonight?
Yeah, without divulging too much, Hutchie, it was a pretty robust conversation that we had this afternoon, and I appreciated him calling back. I rang him yesterday and left a message. He got back to me. Look, we had it out. I stand by my comments and he stood by his, but I think there's no question that Richmond got ahead of themselves yesterday, and I said that to him on the phone. When you can have 113 less disposals yet lay 13 less tackles, and the way that St Kilda played and entered their forward 50 under no pressure, clearly Damien's comments last week saying the best is yet to come, the players read that, they were in the top four, as they've got a history of doing. Richmond.
It seemed a deeper issue between you two than just isolated to that incident. Is that fair that this runs a bit deeper?
Yeah, that's fair. Obviously, we've got mutual friends because we played in a premiership together. So we have a premiership reunion every Thursday before the grand final, and it did get back to me that he was upset with a few comments that I'd made over a long period of time. But he made that very clear that he separates me as the media performer and a former teammate, and there's no hard feelings.
Can I just make the point that it seems to me like the greatest overreaction to a tweet I've seen some good ones this year, and we'll address it a bit later. I cannot understand how a comment saying that Richmond have got a bit ahead of themselves is worthy of that response.
Well,
and I'd love to see Kane. Does that mean he'd love to knock your block off, or he'd love to see you in the same situation? What do you think that meant?
It looked like that, and he addressed that today, Caro. But that's what Hutchie's point was. There is a little bit of history behind that, and I think any mention of my name got his back up.
Have you been critical of his coaching or of Richmond?
Not so much, but I've been critical of Trent Cotchin. I've been critical of Richmond. I was really critical of their finals performance going back a while. I was critical of the fact they dress up on Mad Monday and celebrate poor seasons. I can't understand how they can do that. So there's a history there.
And just on Damien, like, one of his greatest strengths is one of his biggest weaknesses. He's one of the most loyal people. Once you're on Damien's side, he's with you forever. And I know, so that's just
there wasn't a personal attack on a player.
He's walked in after one of the worst loss he's had in 12 months. He's asked a question. He's emotional. And obviously he's let it spill over.
You know, I really like Damien Hardwick, but he does make comments sometimes that befuddle me. I mean, that comment that sometimes it's good to get a reality check. I mean, I was at that game. There was nothing good about that performance, and nothing good can come out of a performance like that.
You're not convinced about them again, Richmond?
Well, I've never been convinced all year. They have certainly a very improved football team on last year. But if you look at who they've beaten this year, Craig, I mean, they've only beaten two of the current top 8 sides in Melbourne, which was a good, fast and furious win, but not super convincing, and a good win against Port, albeit not huge. They still haven't played... If the big three are GWS, and Sydney's another one, but GWS, Geelong and Adelaide, they were belted by Adelaide. They lost to an undermanned GWS, and they still haven't played Geelong. So they've got Geelong, St Kilda. They've got a really tough draw ahead. I think they've got GWS again, and of course they've got to play Geelong, and they've got to go to Fremantle and play Fremantle. So we'll find out about Richmond in the next 6 weeks.
I think we already have, Carol. I can't believe, as a Richmond supporter, that you'd take that line, because they are percentage off top 4 after 16 rounds.
They're a top 8 team this year, but there's no way they're a top 4 team.
No, but
absolutely no way.
No one picked them for the finals this year, so they are percentage off
Apparently
top 4.
last week on this show, someone was talking about them in a grand final. It
wasn't on this show. Nathan Brown thinks that any one of the top 8 could possibly play in the grand final. So I think you've got that emotional side as a Richmond fan, because because every club, you could say that about Melbourne, you could say that about St Kilda, you could say that about Port Adelaide.
I tell you what I think about St Kilda. I think if St Kilda play anywhere near that level as they played against Richmond and GWS, they are a top 4 side.
They've been belted.
If they're top 4, surely you expect to play in the grand final and win it. They were top 4 last week. My concern over them is Butler, Rioli, Stengel, Castagna, Menadue, Lambert. Those slider players that they've got, especially in their forward line, in a big final, can they get found out?
The forward situation will come and haunt them.
I know they've done a good job, but their expectations must be to finish top 4. If you finish top 4, you can win it.
I'm with Lordo. I think there was a bad night at the office. They've only had 2 of them.
No,
2 big bad nights in the
office. Yes, but they have had a...
They're okay.
Like Port Adelaide,
and
because
while you've
they
been
finished...
away, dare I say, they've been playing...
I'm well aware of what's happened.
Really good footy.
Don't throw that card at me.
Last week they lost clearances, contested ball, inside 50s. They kicked 6 goals, 1 from set shots. Port Adelaide kicks 3 goals, 8. That was the difference.
Still
in the
a big scalp on them.
They've beaten 2 teams in the top 8. They've beaten 2 teams in the top 8. And like Port, because they were bad last year, they've had a very favourable draw. And they've got a tough 6 weeks. This is when we'll find out if they're seriously improved or just improved.
Let's move on. The coaching merry-go-round feels like it's about to really hot up. We're going to deal with the Suns in a moment. Collingwood, fascinating. Nathan Buckley, after the game, a rare insight, I think, and he was in your chair while you were away and still pretty defiant about his role back then, wasn't he? It looked to me like he had a good grip on his fate on the weekend, and he spoke as much, and Taylor Adams addressed as much on Future Stars yesterday too.
I'm pragmatic, but I'm not defeatist. I do my job as well as I possibly can. And try and encourage others to do theirs as well as they possibly can. There's 2 things in it. I think there's hard work and there's talent. I'm working really hard.
Are you concerned that the situation with coaching could impact the team?
They're only human, and there's no doubt that it does. There's no doubt that it does impact in some shape or form, but that's the reality, and it ain't changing.
It's never an enjoyable position to be in when your coach is copying it like Bucks has. Yeah, I'd definitely be lying if I said that it didn't have an impact.
He spoke about it being a tipping point, and in these situations with coaches, it can be hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube once the momentum starts and the fizz goes out of the season, if you like. He spoke to me like he was a bit resigned to the fact that this was over for him. Yep. Do you think that he would have a good grip that it already is?
I don't think...
Would they have told him that...
I wondered about that, and I'm told that he hasn't been told as much. I also agree,
having
though,
conversations
that,
in the corridors.
And I think he is well aware. It's looked to me... I mean, I think the tipping point was more him saying the players have given up on the season. That was... But doesn't he get more impressive with every terrible performance? I mean, that he keeps his patience with the media. He is so polite. He answers every question honestly. He's clearly got a future in this game. I don't think it'll be as a senior coach, certainly not at Collingwood. He's clearly finished, and I think that he'll probably announce his resignation, but I think he'll coach out the season.
What does it mean for the rest of the footy club? You know, all areas will come under scrutiny, probably recruiting, admin.
Well, it's an intriguing situation, Craig, because there are 3 different reviews going on. Jeff Walsh is reviewing footy. They've got an independent businessman reviewing the admin. And I would say of all the other positions, I think Gary Pert is the most vulnerable and the most under pressure. And I would be surprised if he survived into a 12th year as CEO. Eddie Maguire, I understand, his board is also being reviewed in terms of governance by an Egon Zender consultant. I think Eddie's going to dig in and certainly see out this term. So I would predict by next year there'll be a new coach and that there'll be a new CEO.
And where do they turn for the coach? You hear all the Chinese whispers around about the big names in the market. Most of them are unobtainable, and I guess one of them will be here very, very soon. Ross Lymore will pose a question. He was the latest one thrown into the mix today.
He was today.
Yeah. Brad Scott's probably the other wild card who's contracted to North Melbourne. What sort of job is it? Where do they look, Lordo?
It's a big job, and it's a job for someone experienced. And I think that I'm not talking a Paul Roos type, but I'm thinking with Brad Scott. I'm not saying Brad Scott is the right man, but after 8 years at North Melbourne, Cornsey, I'm thinking if he could get out and actually move to a club like the Gold Coast Suns or Collingwood, that maybe it'd be a win-win. A win for North Melbourne, getting a fresh start, and a win for Brad Scott as well.
I'm with you on that. I think if they're the clubs that we think are going to have vacant coaching positions, Brad Scott is ideally suited for Gold Coast. And I actually think Gold Coast, Hutchie, you might disagree, is a better proposition for Brad Scott than Collingwood. New facility, the young players they've got, 4 picks inside 10 last year. He's lived up there, he's got history there. I think that's the one I'd be looking at if Brad Scott was to leave North Melbourne.
But he's a Melbourne boy and he's coached at Collingwood before. And ironically, Nathan, he took the job at North after Nathan rejected North Melbourne. I think Brad, he'd be good at either club. But I reckon Collingwood might be the number one, and I think the key to Brad Scott's decision will be Josh Kelly.
Why do you say that though, Haji? Caro, with performance, sorry. I might not be welcome back if I keep doing that. But performance-wise, Gold Coast is a better fit. There's more upside
they're the biggest
to
club
Gold
in the
Coast.
country.
I know that. But look at their playing list. And
there is so much upside at Collingwood. I think Collingwood should do a total footy rebuild of their team. And I think he's shown that he's willing to do that. Obviously, the Gold Coast has got upside too, but I think Collingwood would be a more tantalising prospect.
You're ruling Clarkson out of being involved in this merry-go-round.
Alistair Clarkson is emphatic. He is staying at Hawthorn. And I think things like Luke Hodges' retirement today will only make that more... He'll be more determined that there needs to be continuity at that club. He's not going to Collingwood.
We think there'll be 2 seats available, Gold Coast and Collingwood, and when one club goes to market, that's when things start to swirl. And the Brad Scott thing's interesting to me too. Like, at some point, someone's going to talk to the other party there. It's just a matter of who and when. But
and there are 2 clubs that have now announced reviews of their internals.
Yeah, and the Suns were fairly emphatic in their review announcement today in what was Mark Evans' first bold move, announcing there'll be a football department review, which might be concluded by as early as August, and what many are already saying, including us along the way, that it could sound the unfortunate death knell for Coach Rodney.
Including you along the way.
Rodney Eade, yeah. Yep. So if that happens, and they end Rodney Eade in early August, and Collingwood are around the same time frame, it puts a lot of pressure on clubs and coaches who haven't been extended, like Brad with 1 year to go, doesn't it?
I just think that if Josh Kelly doesn't go to North, then Brad won't feel obliged to stay and North won't feel obliged to keep him.
One player comes in on one player.
Well, they've made 2 big plays. I don't think Dustin Martin will leave Richmond, and I'm not sure that Kelly will definitely go to North.
But you wouldn't mortgage your future on as a coach on one player.
But he would feel incumbent on a big name player.
Regardless, it's going to be a tough year for him next year if he stays at North.
But he was part of the group that did the big sell. It'd be a bit much of him then to sort of walk away. I believe that Brad thought about it. He made it clear on this show that he might leave and that the club might agree with that decision.
Fantastic announcement today from Luke Hodge. All class to the end. He's playing the year out, which is the good news, but has announced his retirement before game 300. This is what he had to say. All class and dignity today, the Hawthorn former captain.
Oh, we've had discussions from even when we signed contract last year that if everything went the way we'd planned, that this would be the last year, because we knew we had a lot of younger guys that were ready to stand up. But I think the last month's really locked it in. Next year, if I had played, I'll be taking a spot of one of those younger guys. And as Clarko said, if we're talking about the future of the footy club and how we can best leave it when we're out of here, it's by giving those guys the responsibility that they've really enjoyed the last month or so of football.
I watched that and I wrote down some words about Hodgie. 4 C's come to mind: courage, composure, competitor and class. They're the 4 words, and it's rare in a player that you have someone as tough as that to be so skillful. Rarely do you get both, and obviously I haven't spoken about his leadership either. What a phenomenal captain he's been.
And clutch also.
Clutch,
as well.
yeah.
In the big game, his performances in grand finals unbelievable. For me, there's only 2 that rival him in the modern era. Selwood, I just think he's equal, and also Michael Voss, who's just been...
And a dual Norm Smith medalist too. And coaching or media will be the interesting one. He'll be coveted as a coach, you would think. Yeah,
I think media's the path he'll go down. Listen to him in the press conference, and I think he wants a year at least out of football and just to enjoy life a little bit more with his family and media roles. He'll be brilliant.
Alistair Clarkson's, comment that the other word doesn't begin with C, sorry, but the way he surrendered himself for the sake of the team. And although he won 2 Norm Smith medals, he often didn't play the game he might have wanted to play individually to win the game for the team. Do you think there's any chance he might go somewhere else next year?
No, I think a lot of clubs will ask the questions I flagged weeks ago. You would think the Suns will talk to him about what coaching looks like. Mark Evans would be a fan. You'd think many clubs will. Some would give him a year to play if he wanted to in order to coach, but it sounds like he's emphatic he's not playing, and that's good on him. What a great career he's had.
And they asked him, did you have any regrets? He said, no, life would be pretty boring if he didn't make a few mistakes along the way. So he's been a real man's man and the ideal captain.
Well done to Luke. He'll be with us on Thursday night on The Footy Show. Can't wait to catch up with the Hawthorn great Luke Hodge. Huge show. Trent Cotchin in the house too. Jack Viney and a whole lot more. Thursday night, 8:30 on The Footy Show. And then Footy Classified back next Monday, 9:45. The complete crew. Kane doing it beautifully. He'll be vying for selection again, but Gaz will be back in the house. And looking forward to having Gary back next Monday night at 9:45. Caro settled back into the chair. Ross Lyon will be in that chair next. Looking forward to that discussion right after this on Footy Classified. Welcome back to Footy Classified. It's been a wild season, been a wild 12 months for our next guest. It's been a wild footy club this year, the Fremantle Dockers, but things are turning the right way for Ross Lyon, and timing's everything. Thanks for joining us in the hot seat.
Pleasure, Hutchie.
It has been an unusual year for your footy club. Slow start, brilliant next block of games, a slow mid again, and you've come out of the break again a better team. Have you worked out what team you are yet?
Well, the strategy last year and the club really statement was we recognised it was a transition period, and we come out of pre-season. We probably played a couple of older teams, but those guys, it's always that challenge of integrity of selection. So we didn't get moving there. We had a bit of a blend, but then from there we recalibrated and we won 6 out of the next 7, with our core senior players really leading the way, led by Fife, who's been magnificent. And then we really fell in a hole for 3 weeks, but again, just got back to some fundamentals, some more debutants, and we've been in really 3 competitive games. I thought our performance down Geelong was magnificent, and I thought the Saints, when you see what they did to Richmond on Friday night, was full of merit, and probably if we didn't slaughter the ball, you get those 4 points. So, and then on the weekend, we jumped out of the blocks, and look, both clubs, I think the Kangaroos and us, and Brad's in a similar position, lots of young players and inconsistencies within games. But I think both teams would walk away thrilled with their young players and the direction of their clubs.
We're going to speak a bit about the redirection and the rewiring, the re-plumbing, the re-stumping.
Well, they're Brad's words.
And the early selection in the year. But you mentioned Fife. Yesterday he looked like the player that he was. You've been a little bit defensive of him along the journey this year with Terry Wallace and others about his form. And understandably he's had a fair road back from a serious injury. Is he becoming now the player again and the leader you thought he could be, and him indicating he wants to stay, I guess, as part of that too, is it?
Yeah, the whole combination. Without going into specifics, I'm protective of all my players. And that's the role of a coach. I mean, you need to challenge behaviour but support at the right time. So Nathan, he was a significant leg injury over a period of time. I think from the back end of 15 and then 16, so it was 2 breaks, and we took the long-term approach, and he didn't miss a beat over summer. He was voted in unanimous captain. But it was always going to take a while to come to hand, and he was starting to do that in that period where we won 6 out of 7. And then he copped a chest injury, which I thought was just told it was bruising, but it turned out to be a bit deeper than that. And you could see he was distracted with it and sore, and he gets targeted a lot. So we put him out to pasture for a little bit, played him forward against St Kilda, but we saw signs that he was physically and mentally ready to go again. So I texted him earlier in the week, I think on a Tuesday night, and said, mate, get yourself set for the midfield. I think you're ready to go. And he vindicated that. He led magnificently. I think it was we all know it was his best game for the year. And we think he wants to stay with the Dockers, and I think that's close, but I always bow out of that sort of situation.
So the accepted version is that you would have liked him to be captain last year, but the players voted for another player. And one of the reasons was that they felt Mundy would be a better leader, and that there might have been an element of selfishness, as so many champions have in their game, to Fife's game. Is he different to the player who didn't get the players' vote last year?
Well, I think I learned a lot of lessons out of that as well, because really Matthew was still there, and that transition piece didn't go as well as we thought it would. But and I think it was very difficult for David Mundy. David Mundy got voted in because at the end of the day, the players thought he was going to be the best captain. And I had a view that it was Nathan, but we are a democracy, believe it or not. And the players, we had a strong debate, and it was really marginal anyway, the vote. But at the end of the day...
But what's changed, Ross? What made them think
Nathan, what, for me or...
For the players who obviously didn't...
Well, you'd have to ask the players, but he was unanimous this week. So they also, when they give reasons why. So in the end, Nathan said, well, how do you see me? And there was some feedback within that. He's certainly not, what was the term you used? Selfish. It was never selfish.
No, I'm not... That was the vernacular.
That's the trait that he was labelled with.
That many champions have, let's face it.
Yeah, I think every league football player needs to be selfish in their preparation, but it's the ability to sort of bring others along with you. And when you're so singular and focused, and I think Kane was one of those preparers as well, you've got to make sure that you get outside of yourself. And I think he recognised that feedback. He worked hard on it, and to the point it was all but 4 had him as the #1 selection. So we all need feedback. We all seek feedback, and he acted on it, and he's been a wonderful leader this year. And I think David Mundy, to his credit, And that's the calibre of person he is. He would have liked to be captain again. He heard the players vote, and as that happened, he said, "Nathan, I'm right behind you, and I'll support you fully," and that's what's occurred.
Ross,
sorry, go ahead.
You lost to Port Adelaide in round 2 by 89. It was reported that on the Tuesday, or the Monday or the Tuesday, you sat down with your leaders and you wanted to relinquish some of the control that you had given to them. Is that how it went down? And can you explain to us what went on?
When was that? Leading in or post?
Post the round 2 game versus Port Adelaide. It was reported, I think, on...
The inference
Lots of things are reported, yeah.
The inference was, it might have been Damien that reported at the time, Damien Barrett, that you'd backed in the older players and they hadn't measured up in the first 2 rounds and you had to go down a different path on the basis that the senior players had wanted you to back the older players in.
Yeah, I think there was an element of that, but it was really about what I learned out of last year was you've got to communicate change. So as early last year when we were transitioning the youth in, and we had a number of really loyal players and great campaigners in Tendai and Matty De Boer, those sort of guys who were getting squeezed out for... We're getting the benefit now for Langdon and Blakely and Weller. And we probably didn't communicate that. They said, look, just bring us along for the ride and we'll support it. But we probably left it, they had to read between the lines. It was a very difficult situation. So I learned from that and we learned from that as a club. So as we're going down that path again, we wanted to make it really clear. And we just said, we just got them in and said, guys, this is where we're at and this is what we need to do. And we need you to lead and support those young players. That's what that meeting was. So it was just transparency and communication. So I was really learning a lot about bringing people along for the ride.
Speaking of young players, Ross, the fairy tale debut yesterday of Ryan Nyhouse. Just his role, you told him Mundy's come down crook. He's got the nod early in the morning. So would Mundy have played this role on Tarrant? Was he the ideal replacement?
Yeah, Mundy was in red hot form in the midfield, but we'd like to get Nathan going in the midfield, and David's an older player. So there was a lot of debate amongst the coaches. Look, the kid's played down back the whole time. You're setting him up to fail, and can we recalibrate? But we thought it would be a bit small, and you know, Tarrant is an All-Australian defender, so he's got great character. He's a big man, a competitor. He's put on 10 kilos since he's been with us, and we said we really defined simply what you need to do. And look, he probably exceeded expectations, but he's dog hungry. He builds his life off the field, and you can't quarantine that attitude of trying to build your life off it comes on field. So he competed. We knew he'd do that, and he's a real football player. And so he needs to do it again. But you've got to grab opportunities. He's grabbed one, and because as you know, we're analysing our list and we're continuing to make decisions. He's certainly built an opportunity for himself going forward, I would think.
You spoke with great pride after the game a bit about that list management program and your recruiting and rookie system, etc., and you've done it in previous weeks. Is there a slight, not dig, but disappointment in the system that others, the 2 new clubs in GWS and Gold Coast, had so many advantages and you've had to do it the hard way? Did I read that in...
No, I was really messaging to myself and our list manager and our CEO and our president and our players just the reality of the situation. There is a narrative that we're all saying GWS are going to win 5 in a row and they've got all the best kids and we're all playing for second. I think if you have that mentality, you can back off your intensity of development and make excuses for yourself. So it's really a message about, to our players, our club, myself, just to keep that intensity. And it's not about draft picks, it's about seeing possibility and not what other people or you may condition yourself to with the narrative going around. That was the messaging.
So you said to me at the start of this year that even if Fremantle don't make finals for the next 5 seasons, or 4 seasons, you will be coach until the end of this contract. Today you were thrown up on SEN as the potential coach of the Collingwood Football Club next year.
Geez, that'd be a hot seat, wouldn't it? Make this look easy.
Has an approach come your way?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Can you categorically rule yourself out?
Yeah, and I mean, people are going to draw parallels to me leaving St Kilda, but my contractual situation was vastly different, and I had a clause in there, and both parties had a clause in to vacate that contract, and I exercised mine. So there's no such clause in this. It's a marriage where I'm fully committed to them and they're fully committed to me. So it's starkly different. I'm flattered by it because, you know, round 2, the game had left me behind. So now I'm a candidate for one of the biggest clubs in the country. So that's flattering, but it's unrealistic.
Do you think you're universally respected in football, and in particularly in Melbourne, where you coached? if there's one query in the commentary that swirls around you, it's the question over whether you're a rebuild coach.
Yeah.
Do you hear that? And how do you answer that?
Well, I don't feel I need to. Really simply, coaching's teaching. And it's harder to teach an old dog new tricks. So coaching's teaching. I'd suggest the 2 clubs I've been at, I've been able to teach them to play to a system and develop those players, young or old. And that's true at Fremantle. We played in the grand final in our second year, shifted them to a vastly different system, and out of that first draft, Lachie Neale played, Can Sutcliffe played in that, Lee Spur and Tom Sheridan was first emergency, and Lachie Neale's gone on to be a BNF winner. So, you know, objectivity is the search for the truth, regardless of your own prejudice. It's not about fairness, and I'd conclude that a lot of those conclusions have some influence of their prejudice.
We're going to ask you about Harley Bennell, who's
I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Evidently close to playing. He's tested, no doubt, your patience at times, but you've been unbelievably supportive as a footy club, even through the I wouldn't call them mishaps or misdemeanors, or the challenges you've had have been really clear. You used strong language early in the year when you linked the talk around his calf to race, and you've been in fact. Do you stand by that language along the way, and do you feel that
when it's a black kid and a white kid with a calf? Yeah, that's how I felt at the time. There's clearly been players at other clubs with long-term calf issues, and this is an aponeurosis, and it's really, I think, Ben Reid, is it, at Collingwood? He missed 12 months with a calf injury. So, look, Harley, you make your bed, you lie in it. It's hard to change perceptions, and clearly on the Gold Coast, he behaved in a manner at times that put him under pressure, and saw him on the front page of a national paper. Is he on his last chance,
or is your support now unconditional?
No, he's been... Everyone gets unconditional support. We always say we'll support you till we can't. So Harley trains in... I see it on a day-to-day basis. Has he had some slips? And the biggest slips where he was really self-destructing when his calf blew up again when he was about to play. And he had a 2-week period where he had a meltdown, where he was really struggling. But it was self-harming. There was no harm to anyone else. So he needed to get some support and gather himself and reboot, and he's done that. And he should play this week at Peel. So he's an enormous talent. Just seeing him train, we all comment on how magnificent he looks when he's got the ball in hand and how he trains. And he's been an incredibly hard trainer. But everyone needs support. But you're only as good as your next moment, all of us. So, you know, he needs to stack a lot of good moments going forward. So, and he's clear that he's not in the position of a first-year player who's had no misdemeanours, so to speak, in the past. He understands he's walking a tightrope. But for me, he's been fantastic, bar that self-harm period.
Ross, I want to get back to you and your coaching. I listen to Gary Lyon, who sits in that chair normally, and he has a real burning desire or a thing inside his stomach that he never played in a premiership side. What about you as a premiership coach? Do you ever sit back at times and think of that Milne bounce of the ball, or the toe pokes and all those moments that you missed out so far on being a premiership coach?
Well, you've got to be phased feedback, isn't it? You've got to be good enough to get it done. We didn't get it done. 09 we didn't execute. 10, we were the underdog and really fought on. Couldn't have been proud of that group. And it's not over. I'm there fighting. We want to win a premiership at Fremantle. I've certainly been given time. There's some challenges innate in that, but we're building and I'm determined. But, you know, to go and have breakfast with Nick D'Alessandro today, there's a lot of things that come out of those periods more than a cup. But would I like to be a premiership coach? Yeah, but I certainly sit here thinking I've worked as hard as I can, but I need to get better.
Hang around if you wouldn't mind. We've got some more footy, broader issues to talk with you after the break. And Caro's Arrow's up next, and there's a hint of suggestion that you may feature in it, which will be extraordinary. And that's after this, right here on Footy Classified.
There's an anti-media malaise in football that is spreading so dangerously it must be stopped. To illustrate my point, have a look at this random selection.
Don't get me wrong. That's his job.
Sure.
He's there to write shit comments.
Doesn't he talk some crap? I know what he has to do. They have to say something to make themselves meaningful. It's meaningless rubbish.
But there's consistently a lot of noise and a lot of penny dreadfuls trying to be heard, and they tend to go down the sensationalist route because it's clickbait.
No, don't laugh, Ross. 3 good football people not only completely overreacting to comments by journalists and commentators, but shooting and belittling the messenger. No, Damien, Kane isn't paid to write bultish. He's paid as an informed commentator to have strong opinions to share with loving football supporters. Ditto Damien Barrett, and in this case, Terry Wallace. Look, football is a tough gig, but so is football journalism. Yes, we like to get things right, we like to get things first, and sometimes we like to achieve a point of difference. But we don't say things we don't mean just to get attention or to get paid. And Ross, please, penny dreadfuls, we're not living in Victorian England. If you don't agree with us, say so. If you think we're wrong, say so. And if you've got a point to make, say so. But just remember, you shouldn't be denigrating our small role in this great machine of AFL footy.
Well, there's a little bit of history. I don't think we've seen an arrow with a subject just sitting in front of the arrow
when you
at the
threw
top.
up Charles Dickens in 1850s London, that was beyond the pale.
That is
all he did was say that Nathan Fyfe wasn't quite the player he had been before he got injured.
I couldn't remember what he said, really.
Greatest.
I think you're being sensitive. Yeah. I certainly got an important role to play, but there's, I think, what is there, 1,600 journos covering AFL footy?
And that many media managers telling you blokes that all we're doing is sitting around having opinions to get ourselves heard. I mean, we do attempt to actually make a point sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But I think the rigour applied because of the desire to be first with new media coming in and Twitter and Instagram. I think the old media is challenged by the new media and the social platforms. And I think the rigour they used to apply, there's more journos than ever. I think there used to be those that applied a lot of rigour, but I think you are being challenged to not be able to apply the rigour because of the time constraints, and I think that's the challenge.
It'd be a sad day if we weren't interested in everything you had to say, though, wouldn't it, Ross?
Yeah, I'd be out of a job.
Let's move on. There's plenty more I want to have a collective discussion about. One of them, I'll get you in on this too, Caro, is while you've been away, we've seen mental health become a serious issue in football. We've had 3 players since you've been gone, Fasolo, Cloak and
Alex Fasolo was the week I went away, and then of course 2 more from the Western Bulldogs, and other players now talking about issues they've had in the past. I mean, how different is it? It's so different even from 10 years ago as a senior footy coach, isn't it, how you deal with players and their anxieties and other issues?
Yeah, it is. Look, since my time as an assistant at Sydney, we had a psychologist that was there, a clinical psych that the players could be sent to, because as a coach you're not equipped to deal with anything. And in my time at St Kilda we had Sean Richardson, who was basically 3 days a week, and we've got Kim Mercer, we're only 1 or 2 clubs that has a full-time clinical sports psych employed that the players can go and share their issues with internally without it coming back to the coaches unless they want. But it's a high-performance industry for coaches and players, and what comes with that is, you know, incredible amount of scrutiny and pressure and anxiety, and it goes with the territory. But again, the Twitter and the Instagram and the players, it's a new paradigm that it's unregulated and
so
players...
do you treat players differently now than you might have even 5 years ago?
I think because I'm more experienced and, you know, everyone, it's not one size fits all. Everyone's got their own personality. You've got to understand what they can handle and their different breaking points and how you work with them. And there's no doubt that experience helps. So, but there's more challenges. The scrutiny's getting greater, the money's getting bigger, more players around the players. There's more players wrapped around them and concerned with their careers and probably getting involved in their careers. So, yeah, that whole wheel for the athlete is more complicated than it's ever been. And we're seeing the outcomes with mental health issues.
What about the pressure on coaches, Ross? We just had a segment here where we're talking about the futures of Nathan Buckley and Rodney. They haven't lost their jobs yet, but we're talking about who could possibly take over. Yeah. I've heard you speak of Paul Roos, I think earlier in the year, was it sounding out Paul Roos on...
Well, he rang me.
Oh, he rang you, sorry.
Yeah.
So what about yourself then? Do you have a release, something that you need to do to sort of keep your sanity as a coach?
I tend to work. I'm more balanced than I've ever been, and that goes with it. And you delegate more than you do as a young coach, and you trust your assistants more, and that helps you keep a balance and get to game day fresher and not as crazy. But if you break it down, the population of Australia, I'm 1 in 1.4 million. For every 1.4 million, there's one AFL coach. So it's a coveted job. Stress and pressure comes with that, and it's about you try and keep fit, you try and keep moving, but we're not saving babies' lives. You've got to keep it in perspective.
Just one more, just on Connor Blakely. Could he have been looking for a release from the pressures of training, or is that a cop-out for Connor Blakely in terms of missing training, going surfing?
Well, I think it's a cop-out.
Yeah,
We just put that into context. They come off the bye where he had he was in Noosa surfing for a week, and they're letting their hair down. They come back, and then every week if we play Sunday, they have Monday off. They're in half day Tuesday, full day Wednesday, full day Thursday off, half day Friday, and 4 hours Saturday morning or 3 hours. So it's pretty well. But no, I'm happy with it. I don't need them. I don't need them for much more than that. I've always driven off field being more than a footballer because you need some. But I don't want to produce tragedy. So we drive. At one stage last year, we had 22 undergraduate players in undergraduate courses. So that makes you feel good. You want them going out the door in good shape. I
want to get your thoughts on this. Luke Beveridge had a comment on Mark Hutchings on Johannesson, the treatment. He called one of his actions a cowardly act. Now, you had one of the most niggly taggers we've ever seen. Your response, do you think those actions there are cowardly?
I think cowardly is a strong word, and I think I don't comment on other. You win them and wear them. You dish it out. You play within the rules, and you leave it to the people to umpire. So we all move on. But Luke's entitled to his opinion.
On former players, two of your favourite sons clearly want to play on next year in Nick Riewoldt and Lee Montagna. They don't know, and I think it's getting a bit frustrating. What would you think they should do?
Well, it's very difficult to comment on them as Fremantle coach, but both of them are close friends, really. It's easy to become a friend after you stop coaching them, and we went through some great campaigns. I haven't got all the facts in front of me. Clearly, St Kilda has list management, and it's up to them to handle it. But I think if you're in control of your own destiny, you make the decision yourself rather than someone else make it for you. But both of them are playing very good footy. I think Lee Montagna and Nick were almost best on the ground. In a real sense, they're integral, but I don't know exactly where that football club's at with their list and where they're heading.
Have they asked your opinion?
Have they? Nick and I have had some loose conversations, nothing in detail.
Ross, were you able to attend Gillon McLaughlin's dinner?
No, he'd have a nice wine cellar.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just wondering, the way the rules and the game's being umpired, do you get frustrated by that? I know the holding the ball rule, there's a lot of confusion about those sorts of things. Where do you sit on?
I think in previous years there's been more angst, I would think. It's at a nice equilibrium. I think it's incredibly... I never castigate umpires. I think I was taught that when I was playing under 10s by my father, and I think we've got to model the behaviour for the rest. You clearly get disappointed. Hopefully I'm only as good as my next moment, but you get disappointed when they do get castigated. I've been to a losing grand final where the ball's hit the post and didn't mention it. So I think it's in a reasonable place, but not without challenge.
Ross, we appreciate you staying around after a great win on the weekend. Thanks for joining us, and good luck for the rest of the season for the Fremantle Dockers.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Ross Lyon, the Fremantle coach, joining us on Footy Classified, having to put up with an arrow for his troubles too, but handled it magnificently.
Deserve it, arrow.
Good call, bad call. Still to come, and a whole lot more ahead on Footy Classified. A better day for the Bulldogs today. Here's Johannesson's manager, Jim Moranis, walking in to finalise a 5-year deal this morning. Stays at the Bulldogs, which is a coup after the clubs, particularly out west, came for him. It was something the Bulldogs needed. He's in rough form, and the way he's been treated has been questioned. And the whole team really thought I was scrambling for some answers and excuses right now.
Fantastic news. Let's hope it helps his form as well. But I just think with the Western Bulldogs came Alistair Clarkson. I've heard him talk about the mistakes they made between 08 and 09. They turned up, obviously, out of shape, but also with a similar game style. I feel like the Western Bulldogs, and what he learnt from 13, 14, 15 was I can't turn up and play the same way because opposition teams go to school on that. Yeah. I'm not sure what the point of difference has been for the Western Bulldogs.
I think he's tried to be a little bit too clever for his own good, Lordy. I can't believe they wouldn't go to Rory Sloane. That's a clear blueprint on how to beat Adelaide. He's a smart guy. Didn't go to Sloane. Johannesson to Betts surprised me on the weekend, and just he hasn't settled the lineup. So 12 of the 22 on the weekend have played VFL footy. Those players must be looking over their shoulder, thinking, I'll be the next one to go back to the VFL.
Are you both saying that he hasn't taken enough responsibility for the season?
No, I just think he perhaps got carried away in what happened last year and has tried to be too clever. I've seen Easton Wood play in the ruck hutchie in the centre square. I've seen Bontempelli do the same. He's trying to be revolutionary in his coaching, but this year it hasn't worked.
The team certainly hasn't looked any more settled. I mean, it just keeps changing, doesn't it?
The Crows, another good win. Tex Walker and you, what's going on there? There's a Twitter war that's been I guess goes back a little bit of a way. Here's some examples of it. It continues. You can see Tex weighing in on you on Twitter 2 or 3 times. Is this genuine or is this lighthearted?
I'm not exactly sure. I think there's a little bit of seriousness to it, Hutchie. Clearly, Tex is a larrikin. Carrows, you've had issues as well in this space. But look, I think there's some seriousness behind it. I just think Taylor is oversensitive, like I was as a player, to criticism in the media, and perhaps I've said something he's not happy with. But I don't think it's a smart move. You wouldn't see Travis Boak or Joel Selwood or any of the other captains in the AFL tweeting for no reason.
He's a bit of a character, maybe it's tongue-in-cheek. Melbourne were magnificent in the late stage of the game, in a tough game to get out, given the challenges that they had, Kane. How do you rate this win?
Terrific. As good as I've seen from the D's for a while. No Jones, Viney, Watts, Hogan back for his first game. The drama of Thomas Bugg. They got smashed in every stat, yet were able to do this and hang on late in the game. This is a game that Melbourne would have coughed up in the last 5 years, Lloydie, and I think it's a sign of their maturity.
Yeah, spot on. And I think, obviously, the unsavoury incident was Clayton Oliver with a Carlton fan over the weekend. We take a look at that. Obviously, there's fault on both parts here. There's nothing worse than someone hanging over the fence and abusing a player. But Clayton Oliver, you've just got to be better than that. And I just think that here he goes again with that fan. And obviously, they've made an apology throughout the day, Hutchie.
He did, and this is what he had to say.
Shouldn't have reacted the way I did, and I apologise for that, taking the polish off the team win, moving forwards. Obviously, I'll learn from this and won't happen ever again.
They got some extroverts, some type A's in the Melbourne team, and the rap sheet's building a little bit. It's not necessarily a bad thing, this, though, is it? They're starting to express themselves, albeit some of those you don't want to see.
Well, Tom McDonald said on radio tonight that the last 4, they knocked that on the head because they just don't want that within their football club. But just Oliver Carroll, he's just got to understand that he's going to cop that for the rest of his career, and you just don't react to what someone says over there. I said that a few weeks ago. I love what they're doing on the field. They've just got to draw that fine line.
The fan has spoken to The Age tonight, and I don't think what he said was particularly impressive.
You look at what Hawthorn have done. Now, clearly there's a couple there that they'd like to take back, but they're starting to be relevant again, Melbourne. We're talking about them now. All of them haven't been spot on, but I don't mind their aggression.
And I agree. I don't know why supporters need to say such ugly things to players either.
Port were great. We'll address that in good call, bad call. The West Coast are an interesting one. One of the peculiarities of that team is there's 2 Brownlow midfielders, 32 and 34, and they're clearly grappling with how to integrate both of these into the team, given how limited it is the roles that Prentice can play if he's not playing midfield.
Yeah, no doubt, Hutchie. They've got an issue with this. People inside the Eagles say that Matthew Prentice, to have his value that he needs to be getting 8 to 10 clearances per game. With no Nat Nui, he struggled to do that, and then he doesn't offer anything else on the outside. So Mitchell's the same. They can only surely play
Prentice has signed up for next year, so does that mean Mitchell retires?
Well, that's the way it looks, because you can't play both of them in the same side on a big ground. Whether one of them, they share the roles, I'm not sure, but you can't play both.
So before we go to the break, there was a revelation on page 3 of the News Limited media today regarding an in-house love affair at the AFL between a senior manager and a younger woman. Someone has leaked a couple of text messages to News Limited. The AFL have gone to ground on this today. No one will talk about it.
What have they said publicly?
They're not saying anything about it. They won't confirm or deny whether it is a member of the AFL executive, and I don't know whether it is a member of the AFL executive. But I ask you, Craig, and I don't know who it is, but if it is a senior person at the AFL, or even someone, even just below executive level, who's had an affair with a younger woman at the time the game is looking at developing, and it's taken 18 months to develop a new respect and responsibility policy, and obviously trying to improve its attitude within head office towards women. Is this going to go further? Do you think this is a story that could affect a career of a senior manager?
I don't know anything about it other than what I read today, so I have zero knowledge.
You're well informed normally about what goes on at the AFL.
Zero knowledge of it.
Hypothetically.
I would think, to answer your question, they've got a respect and responsibility mandate, and they have a Champions of Change agenda. So I'd think, Gill would take it pretty seriously.
Do you think someone should lose their job over that?
I don't know enough about it, but I certainly...
There wasn't a lot of substance in terms of referencing sources and people and whether they've been a complaint made. So a lot of unanswered questions for me just reading the paper.
The silence and... There were messages coming out of the AFL today that gave me the indication that they just want this to go away and they're not happy about it, obviously. And I think it could be something that will come back to haunt them.
Good call, bad call, up next here on Footy Classified. Unprecedented scenes here on Good Call, Bad Call. A debutante gets the new ball. We haven't seen this in a long time.
She's
Caro,
not happy.
a month off, you need a little bit of sharpening up, and Kane, away you go. Jake would be pulling the wrong lever if he left the Crows. Good call, bad call.
Good call, Hutchie. I think success is everything. They're going to offer him a good, sizable contract. It's not what he's going to be offered from interstate, but surrounded by good players in that back line, he'll be a much better player at Adelaide, so should stay and sign with the Crows.
Caro bowling into the wind for the first time. It's time the mystery surrounding the whereabouts of Joe Watson's Brownlow medal came to an end. Before you answer, this is what his cousin Seb Ross had to say on the weekend.
Have you got any idea? Is it at AFL House? Is it Job's house in a sock drawer? Where is his Brownlow, mate?
I actually have no idea. I do know they're at Nan and Pa's house. They've got one sitting on the wall, so I'm not sure if that's a replica or the real one.
Good call. Revealing call there by Seb Ross. I wouldn't have thought Grandma and Grandpa would have a replica of the Brownlow medal, so maybe when Gillan McLachlan said it was in his top drawer, it either wasn't or he's moved it.
Hutchie, one for you. AFL officials travelling mid-season breathed a sigh of relief when they heard of Caroline Wilson's European sojourn. Good call, bad call?
Yeah, good call. Good call. Inconsistent from Caro call. Been a critic of the overseas jaunt. We love
Once,
it.
with Andrew Demetrio took 10 weeks off in the middle of a year.
Then you went away. But in future, you have to announce at the start of the year you're going, so all the officials who want to clear their holidays out can go at the same time and they stay out of the papers.
Caro, the players' code is a thing of the past. But before you answer, let's take a listen to David Zaharakis on the Sunday Footy Show yesterday.
To do something like that, yeah, that was pretty disappointing. A few of the boys flew the flag quite highly there. I think he realised what he did, but still, you don't want to have that in the game.
Yeah, good call. Dibba-dobber call, but dobbing shouldn't have the nuance that it used to have. I think that if you're going to do it, though, be consistent and always be honest, and we stamp out this sort of stuff.
Lordo, Port Adelaide proved they're a top 4 lock with their win on Sunday against the Eagles. Good call, bad call.
Bad call, Cornsey. Take your Port Adelaide hat off for that call. No, I'm only joking. I think they're a real chance for it, but I need some more consistency from them. But no one's putting their hand up to this position, which makes it such a great season.
Hutchie, the Lions will help pay Tom Rockliff's salary at a rival club next year. Good call, bad call?
No, bad call, an extravagant call. But they should call. Here's a chance for them to get a better trade deal for Tom Rockliff if he decides to go. Shouldn't have to act under free agency. All they do is they'll have the spare money in their cap. They've got to spend it on someone. They should sweeten the deal once he decides to go and get a better pick for him in return and drive a better bargain. And Adelaide looks like the buyer, don't they, at the moment?
Oh, I've actually got a call. I feel as though I've been squeezed out of this segment completely. Matthew, Alex Neil-Bullen made the smartest play of 2017 over the weekend.
Good call, Cara. Absolutely love this one. Let's take a look at it. Neil-Bullen, you see the time there, 49 seconds to go.
This is Gary's theory. You've got to kick the ball if you use the 30.
But if you're 70 out, I understand that. But not when you're within kicking range. He was just, I think, inside 50 or just outside it. Took all his time. BT's even hammering him, saying, don't worry about this time clock. But then he just pops it over. Now 30 seconds. He takes his 30 seconds. Game over, Hutchie. So smart.
And one for you, Kane. The Swans should be the premiership favourites. Good call, bad call?
Bad call, Caro. Premature call, but if they knock off GWS on Saturday, that will be a good call. So, premature call.
Tomorrow's headlines are next. They'll get you up to speed for the month you've been away, Caro, right after this. Tomorrow's headlines are here. Caro drifted back into the age today and has come up with this.
Gag number 10 about my holiday. That's it. No more. Nathan Buckley's time is up, says the age.
Oh, strong in the Australian. Hawthorn's Hodge era coming to an end.
In the West Australian stock saw, all about Peter Sumich possibly getting an AFL job. And the Adelaide Advertiser, give it a rest. Malera may have a spell.
And the Herald Sun, Kelly gang raid. Bucks man Ned hold reins of contenders too. So there you go. All about Craig Kelly and his influence on
He manages Brad Scott for a start.
It does. I look forward to reading the age. It's great to have you back.
Thank you. I had a nice holiday. Thanks for asking.
We have missed you, and I'm glad you had a good time.
Great to be back.
Kane, very nice debut by Kane.
Thanks, Hutchie.
Good working with you again.
Thank you, you too.
Yep, there'll be another chance for you on the way, I reckon. Great to have you along.
Well done,
Ross. Gary will be back next week. Thanks to Ross Lyon for joining us. We'll see you next Monday night right here on Footy Classified.